My son didn't sort of really believe it because he experienced in 2006 the same, and we came back home to property. I was telling them to get out now, and I was using the horn continuously because the mobile phones weren't working at that point of time. So in the end he realised that for Mum to turn around and get upset and tell him to go, he had to go. We ended up in the car park at Australind because we had the dogs and we didn't want to go in the buildings, which a lot of us did, stayed in the car park.
I was looking for halters and lead ropes in the dark. I didn't know where I was going to move the horses to at that time. I put something out on social media, so two of my children went down to Harvey for the night and I started moving horses out. When I came back for the second lot, I heard the next road from mine was closed, so I knew that I needed to move horses fast. The kids were quite unprepared because my youngest two went to Harvey and the older... Sorry, I feel bad because I separated us on the night. My two youngest boys got picked up by family friends and went to Harvey, and my oldest son stayed with me through the night to help move the last of the stock. Unfortunately, the two youngest ones had gone one way and we took our last trip of horses out another way, and then we were separated because the roads were closed between us.
It was only from our neighbours that our neighbour, he rang me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and he said, Jim, the fire's breaking the containment lines and it's heading across your paddock. So virtually panic set in more than anything, and where to go, what to do, and because it come that quickly, even though we had bags prepared and the car and all that was all ready, there was other factors, the animals, the cattle, get them into a safe area, but we just didn't have that time. As we drove out of here, the fire was right behind us. The most frightening thing was what would happen to the cattle, and you see other fires in other shires, and you watch farmers go around destroying their cattle because they got burnt, or their sheep, and those sort of things flash through your head and you think, well, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be coming back to walking around shooting me animals.
I said to Dad, this doesn't look good, it's looking worse every hour. I think we should stay, and that was from then on, that's how it developed for us. We felt as though it was an ability for us to do that at no risk, or a minimised risk to us. If Mum had been here, which she wasn't here, she was in Perth, luckily she would have gone, but Dad and myself and other friends definitely would have stayed and felt as though we were comfortable to do that.
You just run on adrenaline, and natural instinct was try and just defend any flare-up. So my job became running from hither, thither and yon by rotation, and perhaps the shed lit up 6 times, but I was here and I got it each time. My brain very quickly went, I can't save the vineyard, you can't fight the bush, so just defend my building assets. So I very quickly went down to cellar door, house, winery and shed, and that was all I tried to save. The vineyard got smashed, and all the irrigation and so on and so forth, the infrastructure. And I would always, having been through it, and as my neighbours have, we've all discussed it, we'd all do it again in a heartbeat. I'd do the same thing again, except I'm better prepared.
So it got to the point where the fire was coming over the top and around the sides. There was The house next door started going up. There was paint tins coming over from there. I had a hose on in here. This was all flooded where we are now. I flooded the truck shed and I flooded this shed. The wife got the joeys. Where we're sitting, the car was there. She bagged all the joeys up, threw them in the car. The emu, he was in the cage around the back, but he was all right, so we kept that wet. By that time I had to fill the generator up again. There's all these waves of sparks coming through here, and I'm trying to pour petrol in the generator. Anyway, this is another thing you don't think of with a fire. Petrol generators are bloody dangerous. The height and intensity and all the rest here, you'd probably say I was stupid staying, but we've still got our place, so I think I done the right thing.
We had quite a lot of confidence that we could probably defend.
Look after the farm.
Yeah, but as I said, once you saw how fast it was moving, we did think, as it was.
Denise was on the decking. We've got hoses all around the decking. Everything was kept soaking wet, which she did. I went out with the tractor and there was little spot fires starting on the front of the property. And every time I saw a piece of smoke, I put it out. So that was kept up.
We kept ripping.
And the ripping was kept going. Livestock were brought up around the house and in the small paddocks which have got sprinklers all around them. So nothing was going to get burnt anyway.
They were a bit crushed up, but they were going to be alive. But it was a question of just putting them in all this. That's why we have the small paddocks around.
During the fires, you were virtually on your own, and we knew that.
Yeah. Other people are either looking after their own property or they're gone. Got to be something that you decide to do, and you've got to believe that you're capable of doing it.
Most of the other people had gone, they'd evacuated, so especially the neighbours in Yarloop here, they'd gone. And most of the neighbours out the back of Yarloop had gone as well. And we put out the fires around the houses and around the sheds. And the fire brigade, I think, the local fire brigades were pretty flat out. I'd heard the fires were in Wager up in the neighbour's property there, so we went out there to start putting that out. And at that time, my other son was coming. He was about 10 minutes behind me, and we were out there for a while. The younger son, Chris, and I were out there, and we couldn't get to the fire. We were putting the fire out, and the other ute never turned up. And so I rang them to try and find out what was going on. They said, "Oh, we can't get through. The fire's across the road." And I said, "There was no fire there when I came through." But that was the fire that went through Yarloop, and it was only a matter of a few minutes that it took to go from Yarloop right out to the back of Wagerup. And I could see the hay shed was burning, and the fire was tearing across the paddock. So I thought, well, what do we do now? We'll try and put this fire out, and it's burning in the paddock and protect the cattle. So I turned the irrigation water on and just let that run on the paddock. And amazingly enough, the cattle all come and stood in the water, and I didn't think they had that much brains, but anyway. And they all survived. We never lost any cattle from the fire.
In the afternoon, there were water bombers bombing the scarp, and I naively believed that they may have stopped it. They disappeared late in the afternoon, and then within an hour the fire was here. I didn't actually fight the fire at all. We just took cover. The reason I made that decision was because I didn't feel that I had any adequate protection. The only preventative measure that I took was to leave the sprinklers on all day around the house, and that may have actually saved the house because the fire burnt to within a metre of the house. I was mainly worried about the house, obviously, like everyone would be, and all the things that you've collected over your life inside the house. We had a small shed with hay in it. And I was going through my mind, because I built the house myself, I was thinking I can rebuild. But then I thought to myself, could I really start again? And it's a pretty daunting thought that you lose everything.
Defending your property will take significant physical and mental effort for many hours before, during, and after the fires. When fighting a bushfire, everyone must be wearing appropriate protective clothing, including goggles to protect your eyes and face mask to breathe in heavy smoke. If your plan fails, identify a place where you can go as a last resort to shelter from the fire.